Well, good morning. Another day, Thursday. We're coming toward the end of another week. My goodness, we're blazing fast or speeding through May here. May 7th. It's crazy. Hope everybody has had a good week so far. Thank you guys for joining in. Appreciate you guys being here. You know, this is the first week that I've had in a while where I've actually stayed on schedule. This is my fourth live stream this week. I've been done Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday now. So it's been a while. I think the past few weeks only had like 2 to maybe 3 at the most. I've been very busy. So this week has been nice. I've actually strategically set on my work schedule time to be at the office actually working on. I've got a lot of award ceremonies we're planning, and we've got, things we just got going on, meetings and things like that. So I've used this week to kind of do catch up. So it's let me be at the office a lot more. So very, very good. Let me know what you guys are up to. How busy your May. I mean, we're going into one of the busiest months in real estate. Let me know how it's going for you guys, how you guys doing there. And if everything's going well, what do you think the market is doing? Are you guys busy? Are you slow? Are you being proactive and generating business? Like what's going on? Let me know. And before I get started, hey, I want to read a little dad joke here because I got this beautiful little calendar that my son got me for Christmas. Yeah, I thought this was actually kind of funny. It says, "Why couldn't the orange make it up the stairs? It ran out of juice." Dad jokes are the best. Dad jokes are the best. They're simple and funny. So, all right. So, guys, today, as we get settled in, grab a cup of coffee. Just so you guys know, I mentioned this once before, I subscribe to a coffee company, Squirrely Joe's, and I really like their coffee. So that's what I'm drinking here. I can't remember. This might be Kindness. I think this is Kindness is what I'm drinking. Squirrely Joe's Kindness blend. They are a Christian-based company, and they have like all of their coffee blends are like fruits of the spirit. So kindness, gentleness, those type of things. So really kind of cool, but the coffee is extremely good. I don't gain anything by recommending them. It's really good coffee. I had it once at a concert. It was a wind instrument concert, and they were serving it, and I loved it. So at our church, they organized to kind of get it shipped into us, and we pay into that to get some bags of coffee. So anyway, check it out. Squirrely Joe's. I think it's out of Indiana, some Indianapolis or somewhere up in there. So just encourage you to check it out. All right. With all that being said, that's a complete bunny trail. Let me tell you a little bit about the show, what I do here. I've kind of mentioned this at the beginning of every single live stream, just to kind of set the stage about what this is about. So my name is Adam. I've been doing this, I've been live streaming now for, to be honest, I started during COVID era, and then I took a break, and then I came back. So that's what I've been doing. And basically here at this show, this is called the Daily Brief. I go over real estate news. I talk about certain things going on and what all that looks like. And I'm just inviting you into my home office, drinking coffee, going over the news like I would do on my own, throwing it out there, giving you my opinions, my observations. That's what I do here. Bobby, good to see you, my friend. Glad you're here. Hope the training is going well. I know you're definitely, I can't remember, Bobby, remind me again the date when you're doing your thing. I know you told me, but anyway, thank you for being here. Greatly appreciate it. So today's show, I encourage you. Yesterday's live stream, I go back and watch it. I'd like to get some people's opinion about my position on like what Zillow and Realtor.com has done. I'd like to hear some feedback on that. I don't know on TikTok if you can go back and watch live streams. I don't think so. You can see how tech savvy I am. I'm like social media inept in some ways. Like I use it because I have to. I don't really understand all the intricate details. I think it's way too complex, but I'm sure most of you guys do. Maybe there's a way to watch it on TikTok live. I don't know. But on my YouTube channel, The Real Estate Advantage, you go back and watch yesterday's live stream. I'd like to get some feedback from you guys on my opinions and observations on the Zillow and Realtor.com, partnership and what that looks like. And I kind of took a strong position against them just because of the way they used their press release and what they talked about. So I'd like to get your all's feedback on that. Today, on today's show, I'm going to be covering as many articles as I can. I've got roughly an hour, so we'll get into this real quick. So settle in. I'll be here for an hour. You can go back and watch it, like I said, later if you don't want to sit here and listen to me the whole time. But I encourage you to do so. I thank you guys for being here. With all that, Oh, hey, Bobby, that's awesome. He said, I placed third in my age group Saturday in Louisiana triathlon. Dude, let's go, buddy. Third? That's killer. Man, in Louisiana, what was the temperatures like in Louisiana? I mean, I don't know if they've hit, I'm assuming they're still pretty high in humidity right now. But that's awesome, man. Third place. Well done. I know you've been training hard, man. I follow you on TikTok, dude. Like it's been epic. Yeah, so today's show, we're going to be talking about, I've got a few articles. We'll get through as many as I possibly can. We got the housing market shift offers big opportunities in May. I'm just going to be talking, and this will probably not be a big deep dive into, what is going on in the economy. I'm just going to touch on a few things before we wrap up the week. This is an article by thestreet.com. I read them every once in a while. Every once in a while they pop up into my feed. So I'm going to go over kind of what their observations are. And really what they're leaning into is a report that was released by the National Association of Realtors talking about trends, inventory, and that kind of stuff. So they just kind of give a good brief synopsis about what that means. So yeah, you bet, Bobby. You're welcome, man. So they just kind of give us a breakdown about what all that means. And it's just kind of a cool little quick read. We can kind of see what is going on in the market. Then, okay, this is an article I was going to cover yesterday, Hands of Real. It says a changing brokerage landscape and the rise of tech-forward brokerages created a vicious cycle. Now, we can read this article and say this is very specific about Remax and maybe about Real, and that is true. And we need to pay attention about what's going on in these kind of maneuvering, because this is a big acquisition of a very large merger, just like when we talked about Compass and Anywhere and what that looked like. It's very relevant to have that conversation. At the same time, there's also lessons for us to pay attention to, even in our own industries, or if you're a broker out there. As we read through this, we need to be thinking about this, not in the context that it's just Remax and Real, but just how does it correlate to us saying forward thinking and what we need to be doing to shore up our own businesses. So that's where this conversation really will probably land, but we'll still talk about Remax and Real and what all that meant, and more or less a case study. Then I'm going to go over the article I was going to go over with yesterday as well, briefly just touching on all of the latest transitions, mergers, executive hirings, and stuff like that has happened in the real estate industry. And again, it's just a way to kind of give us an overview about what kind of landscape is being shifted around. And I will pause for just 1 second. Is this show, even though I am very heavy on the news and going through this data, one thing that people tend to kind of do is they read all this and they'll take one of the two positions. They get excited about all the change and see the forward progress. More than likely, though, a lot of times they take the position of worry, fear, and thinking things are going to crumble, and then maybe go a little bit more negative. The reality is all these type of shiftings that go on like this, they have effect on us, but they all overall don't really change a huge amount. So we pay attention because it helps us to be able to navigate, these changes with our clients and our businesses and that kind of stuff. But we shouldn't get into the position of worrying and fearing about all these changes, because if you've been in any kind of industry at all, it's people are very resilient in navigating change. They don't like it at first, they push back against it, and then they adapt and figure out the way through. So let's just keep that in mind as I do these live streams and we go through the news. It's not about creating an emotional of fear and worry. It's really about just knowing facts and being equipped to be able to navigate those changes that might be coming. So that's the position. That's the whole point of doing this. It helps us to be able to navigate those things much, much better. So we'll talk about that article. Then if I have time, I doubt I will. I will probably get to this one just because it's a fun ending. And then I might have time for two more, but we'll see. This is just a fun little conversation about Jennifer Lopez relists former marital mansion for the heavily discounted price of $50 million after Ben Affleck gifted her palatial property. So we'll read through this. It's not really, so I don't get into celebrity, pop culture, that kind of stuff. But I love their real estate. So whenever I hear about their homes coming to the market, that kind of stuff, I like looking at what their homes are like. Like, I think it's just kind of fascinating to see these large, beautiful homes. So we will do that. We will just kind of look at some photos, and maybe we'll briefly talk about the subject at hand, and we'll see. Then again, if I have time, I'll go into what the Spirit Airlines collapse can teach the real estate industry. The reason why this is kind of relevant, they just collapsed. Spirit Airways is done. It's over. May 6th is when they announced, or May 6th or May 5th. Anyway, it's over. So this is a good conversation. I doubt we'll get to it, but we'll see what happens. And then again, probably not, but we'll see. Refkin sheds light on Compass push for a national MLS. We are bringing MRED national. So it's a conversation with Compass and what he's trying to do with as far as national MLSs. I might roll that over until Monday's live stream. So we'll see. Okay. I'm wasting all my time that I need to actually go over these articles. So let's get started. All right, here we go. Welcome to the Real Estate Brief. I'm Adam. Today, we're going to be cutting through the noise. We're going to get to the truth in the news, look at the data, and I'm going to give you some of my observations and where I believe you can find opportunity. So if you're ready to gain your real estate edge, let's dive into our very first story. And this story is going to be talking about basically a National Association of Realtors report that came out talking about the economical state of real estate. And we'll be talking about that. Cassie, thank you so much for the rose. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you greatly. Hope everything is going well for you. I know you've been very busy. Very proud of your work effort. I tell you, you are a hard worker. You're a hustler. Keep up the great work. So this article here is titled "Housing Market Shift Offers Big Opportunities in May 2026." Subheading says this: as the housing market self-corrects, the National Association of Realtors reveals what buyers and sellers can expect this month. Now, my goal is not to spend too much time on this. I just want to be able to highlight this a little bit and kind of go over about what's going on before we wrap up this week. So let's go ahead and just jump straight into this. It has these pop-up ads. The Street. This is one of the reasons I don't go to thestreet.com that much. They have such amount of pop-ups. I mean, it's just like, look, if I scroll around, things just pop up. The Street, buddy. Like, I understand you guys sell ads, but man, it can be frustrating to read. Sorry. That was just side note. All right. It says, I bought my first home in May 2022, and as a mortgage and real estate reporter, I knew that I was dealing with a May housing market unlike any preceding it. I was buying a place near Seattle where we had to waive all our contingencies and offer way over the asking price for a seller to even consider our bid. Remember, this is 2022. So if you're a real estate agent back then, man, it was like you had to do everything you can to position your buyer to be able to buy. I mean, inflation was going through the roof. Interest rates were extremely low. I mean, the bid wars were real. I mean, it was the highest bid war era of my entire career. It was ridiculous. And it was going crazy. Yeah, I got spammed a little bit here. Hold on. There we go. All right. So that's where she bought, right? That's what was going on here. It drove me up a wall each time my friends and family offered unsolicited advice about buying a house. Even people who had bought just a few years before had no idea what it was like buying a house after the COVID-19 pandemic hit. None of the usual home buying rules applied. It was the Wild West out here. It was Wild West everywhere. I mean, it was literally everywhere. None of the usual home buying rules applied. It was the Wild West. Yeah, thankfully, the housing market has been self-correcting in late 2025 and early 2026. No, I'm not jealous of current home buyers, not at all. The national market dynamics this May could actually start to resemble pre-pandemic activity. And this is where we kind of hone in just a little bit, because this is where, like, when you start looking at the data and you take a little bit of time and go through that and you compare like this year versus last year, it's very similar. Like, there's a lot of similarities, but there is more of an acceptance as far as where we are as an economy. So what I mean is that the consumer is settling into more of the idea of the interest rate, where we're at, home cost, home value, and those type of things. So there's a little bit more of a comfort level. So that's why they're making the say where it could actually start to resemble pre-pandemic activity. It's a trend that we're heading that way, even in spite of the Iranian war and everything else that's going on. It's still a factor, right? All right. It says the National Association of Realtors has released its May 2026 outlook. This study breaks down the buyer trends, inventory, and sales we can generally expect in May based on seasonality trends. Now, I will be going over this report in more detail with my own agents. If you're a broker out there, I encourage you to do that. The thing is I understand sometimes in sales meetings, going through data like that, it can be very boring for all involved. But here's the thing, is even though it's boring, the agents that are paying attention to that, it does add to their quick speak when they're asked how the market is. Even though it's boring data, and they might even see it that way, the moment you get through that and they get asked that question, they begin to recall that meeting. So the National Association of Realtors puts out a lot of great reports that are completely free for members. You can download those and kind of go through those. And also as a broker owner or manager or whatever your role might be, or even a team leader or even just an agent, taking the time to diligently go through those numbers helps you to be able to visualize and see trends. And when you begin to see trends, you can see a much broader picture, and it helps you cut through the headline and get confused about what's going on or buy into hype or the negativity. Because if you can see the overall picture, it makes it a whole lot easier to discern what's actually going to happen or where we may be heading. So just an encouragement for you guys to stay in the data. It says, expect home buyer demand to increase in May. Okay. According to the National Association of Realtors Market Dynamics of May study, month over month existing home sales usually increase 10.7% in May. This can at least partly be attributed to May marking the end of the school year in most parts of the U.S. Families want to use the summer break to move into their new home, get settled. We know this. This is why May, April, May is a great time to list properties. May begins a lot of activity. People start going on vacation and also start looking at properties. But June is where everything kind of begins to close and everybody's doing a lot of work with the closings. Let me just give you another, from experience, let me pause just a second, give you another moment of encouragement here, is a lot of agents follow the ebb and flow of real estate, and it's because of the workload. So what typically happens is the beginning of spring, they're overwhelmed with the amount of listing and putting things on the market and that process, that then towards the end of May, they begin to do a bunch more showings and get more things under contract. When we get into June, what ends up happening is the agent is getting boggled down by all of the busy work and processing and getting things to closing, that they negate the thing that led to getting all the business to begin with. And so what ends up happening is that prospecting, that lead follow-up begins to go down in June. And the reality is you need to look at your numbers and you need to be able to adjust accordingly. And that might come from bringing on some help with some other agents in your office. It might be hiring a transaction coordinator to help take over a lot of those paperwork and those mundane tasks that keep you away from prospecting and building that book of business. So just a word of encouragement is this is the typical trend and it always has been in real estate. So try to stay on point on that. The days are also warmer. Yeah. Demand could also outpace supply in May. While the end of the school year can be a good time for buyers to shop for homes, it can be a difficult time for sellers. Preparing your house for a listing is difficult and time consuming, so families might wait until their kids are out of school to dedicate the time to putting their homes on the market. Some sellers may also be aware that holding out until June or July may lead to even better offers. And given the season's faster turnover, they can expect to sell within a month of the listing date. Not necessarily wrong there, actually. Like, you think sometimes spring is like the best market, but you have, as a seller, you have way more competition. Now, I'm not saying don't list. If you got to sell. But you do have more competition by going on the market in the spring. So that is a factor. Homes usually sell faster than in early spring. Looking at monthly averages from 2015 to 2019, the National Association of Realtors found that the average home stays on the market 30 days in May. Remember, the organization didn't consider data from 2020, 2025 due to skewed data during the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so there is a little bit of a weird gap here in data. This is 2 fewer days than the April average and the exact same number as the June average. Historically, May and June are tied for the lowest number of days houses spend on the market. What does that tell you? The data tells you that's the busiest months of sales, right? More homes sell during those times. As previously mentioned, the combination of favorable weather conditions and the abundance of buyers relative to inventory contribute to less time spent on the market for a typical home. Higher demand and faster selling times are both signs that May is a competitive time for home buyers. Although the competition probably won't be anywhere near as fierce as in 2020 through 2022, you still might have to craft a competitive offer on a house to beat out other buyers. And that's true. You might not have the pandemic, pre-pandemic and pandemic era type surge. It's more of what I would say is a typical type of market. So, but you still need to be able to, as a buyer, to have yourself positioned. So agents out there that are listening, make sure you understand how to correctly qualify your buyers so they're in the best position to be able to negotiate to buy the home that they're competing against with other buyers. Help them position that. That means you got to understand different loan programs out there, down payment assistance program, grants. You got to understand those intricate details, right? So be very informed. All right. Let's see. It says the types of home buyers hitting the market in May. For those sellers who do list their homes in May, what type of home buyers can you expect to encounter? So here's advice for real estate agents out there, in my opinion. This is like the best thing you can think of. Like, where do I get my buyers from and who are they? Historically, the monthly percentage of houses purchased by first-time homebuyers ticks down in May. The decrease is small, 0.6%, but it tends to be the first decline in first-time buyers since January. And that's an affordability problem. There is a massive affordability problem going on right now where the income versus the cost of home is pretty far apart. Matter of fact, your first-time home buyer has moved up. I read a report about this. It's like 38 to 40 years old now. Used to be like in their 20s. So it's a drastic increase. And that all comes because of the pandemic. It caused everything to kind of accelerate very fast and caused home prices to increase so fast that income couldn't keep up with that. So we still got this major crossroad. The dip in first-time home buyers is partly due to higher prices in the spring and summer months. Other first-time buyers fall into the category of families who are waiting until their kids are out of school to shop for homes, which is as late as June in some parts of the country. So that's your issue there too, is they got kids graduating and moving and all this kind of stuff's going on too. May's a complicated month, guys. Higher May home prices also result in a 0.3% monthly downtick in cash-only buyers. The more expensive homes are, the more likely people are to need financing through a mortgage lender. Cash-only buyers' entire goal is to avoid borrowing money for a house. As a result, sellers may work with repeat buyers who need financing through mortgage lenders. So that is just a really brief idea about the economy. And there's many things we could talk about this, but to summarize this and to some degree, we need to understand that inventory levels have reached kind of a 3-year high for the month of May, which is a help in easing in to an adjustment in our market. Okay. The days on the market are trending a little bit upward overall, but coming down a little bit in May and June, probably because this is the buying season, but we're still hovering right around the 30-day mark. Now, they didn't mention this in this article, but it's something just to kind of keep in mind that the price growth that we have seen month over month in homes is hitting right around the 2% range. Some markets are above the 2 and some are below the 2. And we're hitting right in the average of 1.8, 1.9. And just for context and why that number is important is when you start looking at the idea of what the economy is and what the feds look for adjustment of interest rates, they shoot for an inflation rate of around 2%. So when you start seeing that inflation hit the 2% or lower, that's where they feel confident to be able to start adjusting the mortgage rates. So this is all factors that is showing signs of a stabilization and even more so a recovery. It also didn't talk about this, but another issue here is new construction completions are finally hitting the market and they're coming in on the market in volume. And that does provide an additional amount of supply. And so that will help the buyer pool as well and keep the competition a little bit more level. So that's just kind of the synopsis of this economy. I didn't go into huge detail. We kind of did that. I think it was in Tuesday's show, I believe. You can go back and watch that live stream if you want. I went into more deep dive about these numbers. Okay. With that being said, guys, let's jump into another story here. And in some ways, this is kind of the featured story for today. And it goes right along with the whole concept of what we've been talking about. You have this crazy stuff going. Disruption's happening, guys. You got Compass and what they're doing and the coming soon and then negotiating with national or MLSs and making them go national. Very interesting conversation there. And then you got Zillow and Realtor.com making their play as far as trying to maintain relevancy. And then you've got other mergers and acquisitions that are happening. And this one here was a big one. It happened last week. And it's all about Remax and Real. Real acquired Remax. And it is a massive shift. So what Inman, this is an article by Inman. Inman is reporting on this massive transition of Remax assets into the hands of Real Brokerage. This isn't just like a corporate move, panhandling for stocks and that kind of stuff. It's actually kind of a signal for us that the traditional way that Remax has always done business has needed to change. And it's coming into the technology world where Real is more of a cloud-based revenue sharing platform. And so Remax is responding where maybe they haven't been as far tech forward thinking as they needed to be. So they've now needed to make this adjustments to be able to compete with like the likes of Compass and everybody else. So on the surface, you can say, yeah, good move, right? Because instead of like Remax going out there and trying to develop their own proprietary information to be able to compete with a company like Compass or even Keller Williams and other entities that have their own proprietary software, Remax decided to go ahead and partner with a company that already had that. Now they were bought out, and Real is bringing their tools into the system. And what did that arrangement looks like? But that's where we end. That's what's happening. And the reason I want to take note is twofold. One, we want to pay attention about what big moves are taking place in our industry and what they mean. And secondly, we want to put in the minds of ourselves is like when these changes are happening, we need to pay attention and read this and think through, like, am I thinking forward thinking? Like, what am I doing to be able to make sure that I am positioning myself to be in this for the long haul? So this isn't just a conversation about Remax and Real and what's going on there. Even though the topic is about that, and that is something we need to know, it's really more for us to self-reflect and say, are we positioning ourselves correctly to take advantage of shifts? And are we adverse enough to be able to protect ourselves and build a moat around ourselves to stay relevant long term? Okay. And this isn't just for brokerages out there. This is for agents in general. Like, are you following just the trend, or are you a trendsetter? And how do you think through that? So let's go ahead and just jump into this article now as we read through this and just be thinking about those two things. Okay, their years-long decline that drove Remax into the hands of Real. A changing brokerage landscape and the rise of tech-forward brokerages created a vicious cycle. This is by Nick Pipitone, May 6, 2026. It says, the deal that Remax Holdings announced last week, a sale to Real Brokerage in a deal valued at $880 million, did not come out of nowhere. It came at the end of a long, painful, well-documented decline that the company spent years trying to explain and ultimately reverse. It couldn't. Okay, so this is not, people want to read the headlines and think this came out of nowhere. The reality is that's not the case, right? They've been fighting this kind of trend for a while. They've been trying to do new positioning, new hirings, and different types of things going on. So Remax as a company has been struggling as far as that kind of stuff goes. I'm not saying they're not a strong brand. I'm not knocking Remax. I think it's just that there is an issue there, and they were trying to navigate this best they can. So it's not like this came out of left field is the point. By the time Dave Liniger, which he is the guy that started Remax back years and years ago, agreed to vote to, his roughly 38% stake in favor of handing his life's work to a Miami-based tech-forward brokerage. Remax had suffered years of consecutive quarterly declines in U.S. agent count, a streak that stretched through 23, 24, and into 25 with no end in sight. So when you look at the data, this is what Remax was up against. Again, we can self-reflect. Are we in the same kind of boat? Are we having issues? What are we doing to be forward-thinking? U.S. agent count had fallen to under 50,000 in the U.S. alone by mid-2025, with the U.S. and Canada combined down nearly 12% since the end of 2019. The $880 million sale price is, in many ways, the final accounting of lost cost. Okay? How the model worked until it didn't. To understand why Remax lost agents for years, you have to understand what made Remax great in the first place. I actually got to meet Dave Liniger years ago. Interesting little fact. I was a co-owner of a Remax franchise for a few years, and I did get to meet Dave Liniger and Gail. Very sweet couple. It was a good conversation with them. Had lunch with them and stuff. Very, very good people. And he did have a heart for real estate. It was good. Anyway, when Liniger and Gail Main founded the company in Denver in January 1973. The dominant brokerage model asked agents to split their commissions with their broker, often 50-50. Liniger flipped that arrangement. Okay, so he was a revolutionary back in the day. This was like the trend, right? 50-50 was like what the splits were. I know everybody out there is listening to this is like, what? That's crazy, right? Yeah. Under their original Remax model, agents kept nearly all of their commissions and instead paid a share of office overhead and often a monthly management fee to operate under the brand. For productive agents closing multiple deals a month, it was a far better deal. Now, the key there is to operate under the brand. For productive agents closing multiple deals a month, it was a far better deal. And that was kind of their bread and butter. Their bread and butter was agents that were productive. They actually had sales. A new agent coming to the Remax model that was brand new had to fork out fees and that kind of stuff monthly to stay active with the brand. That was not where they were focusing. They were focusing on producing agents. And they grew their entire model from that. The model spread rapidly, and Remax became synonymous with serious, high-producing real estate professionals. The red, white, and blue balloon logo introduced all the Albuquerque Balloon Fiesta in 1978 and adopted it as the official brand mark a year later. Became one of the most recognized symbols in real estate. I don't disagree with that. They had the pins and everything. The model worked brilliantly for decades. Then the competitive landscape changed, and RE/MAX was slow to recognize it. Now, here is something that myself and our company and stuff always focus on, and we say this all the time. We never rest on our laurels. Okay, like, and this is another reason. This is kind of a plug for this show, if you will. This is another reason why it is so important to stay informed and listen to what is happening. Because if I buy into the idea that the way I do business now will carry me all the way through the journey of this company, I'm highly deceived. It will not. The reality is what is working right now might not work even next year. It might not even work in 5-10 years from now. So how do I, as an individual agent, as a broker, as a manager, whatever it may be, team leader, whatever it may be, hedge myself into a position where I understand and have knowledge to be able to adapt as this market changes and as things go forward? So that's the importance of what we do here. That's the importance of reading the news. That's the importance of dissecting and breaking these type of things down and not just dismissing them as just, it doesn't really affect me. No, it does affect you. And this is the lesson that we're learning inside of RE/MAX, okay? It says RE/MAX's U.S. agent count began to decline even before the pandemic, as competing brokerages offering alternative compensation structures drew away productive agents. And this is the thing too. If your model's working right now and you are growing, okay, you're doing great, you're just one new model coming out that promises all the new things, causing everything to crumble around you. You're only one position away, one chess move away from a competitor going in and circumnavigating everything and changing the entire landscape. So if we start looking at this whole trend that we see in our industry, and you go back to yesterday's live show and all the other live streams that I've done, you begin to see a pattern here. There is disruption happening. And the reality is it's always happening. This isn't about fear. This is just business. This is about being informed and making decisions and navigating these changes. A good broker, a good brokerage is going to be teaching their agents these things. They're going to be pouring into their agents these things. Even if the agent says, it doesn't affect me, or this is boring stuff. And even if they don't show up, they keep doing it because they see the importance of that. Okay. So this is our industry. This is every industry. It's every industry. Keller Williams, operating on a profit-sharing model with a commission cap, had already surpassed RE/MAX in U.S. agent count by 2013, and by 2017 had overtaken it in U.S. sales volume as well. Okay, so Keller Williams enters the scene, and they start doing something called the cap model, right? You pay us X amount of dollars, you keep the rest. Now, they still had some fees and things like that associated to it, but they were a direct competitor to RE/MAX, and they were taking their lunch. eXp Realty, which was a offshoot of Keller Williams, by the way, they were originally with that as a team of agents with Keller Williams that split off and did eXp, which is very similar to what KW is. They're very similar, so they're more of a cloud model. eXp Realty further intensified the pressure with a cloud-based model and a revenue sharing arrangement, growing a brokerage from roughly 600 agents in early 2015 to over 20,000 by mid-2019. See the big growth trajectory there is massive, right? When the Federal Reserve began aggressively raising interest rates in 2022, mortgage rates surged and home sales volume collapsed, accelerating a decline that was already well underway. For agents at brokerages like eXp, where fees are tied to transactions, a slow year meant paying less to their brokerage. For RE/MAX agents on the traditional desk fee model, paying anywhere from $300 to $2,500 per month, regardless of production, a slow year meant the math no longer worked. You see what happened? Like this, you got external pressure from business models changing, and you've got an economy that can put pressure on your model. This is a great lesson for us in business. Fixed overhead against shrinking income is a painful combination, and agents who had been on the fence began looking for exits. It's a great quote. Fixed overhead against shrinking income is a painful combination. And I will say there's a lot of brokerages, a lot of franchises out there that have this same issue. If the brokerage themselves is charging monthly fees, when the market shifts, it becomes less of a viable option for agents, and agents begin to look elsewhere. So it's a balancing of the two. It's kind of working through the data to build a very stable brokerage, offering all the tools and systems you need to your agents without jeopardizing the risk of these external changes causing the model to erode, thereby hurting the agents involved. Okay, so it is a Very difficult thing to manage. And all my brokers out there are saying amen, right? You know what I'm talking about. RE/MAX recognized a structural vulnerability in its model and had already introduced an alternative threshold-based program known as RAP, R-A-P-P, that bundles costs into a per transaction cap rather than a flat monthly charge. But the traditional desk fee model remained the dominant experience for much of its agent base heading into the downturn. Okay, so this is the makeup. But again, these are all lessons for us, guys. It says a new generation of brokerages had been building models specifically designed to attract the agents that legacy franchisors like RE/MAX were vulnerable to losing. Real Brokerage and eXp Realty each offered variations on the same basic pitch: lower fixed costs, revenue sharing, equity upside, and technology platforms that supported independent agents without incurring high overhead. See, they had a solution. A good strategist is always going to be looking at the competitor and seeing their weak points and then exploiting them and building something in response to them. That's how you win, right? Compass competed differently on premium technology, brand prestige, and individual negotiated split packages that it aggressively used to recruit established, high-producing agents. But it too was pulling productive agents away from legacy franchise networks. Real Brokerage in particular was growing at a pace that made the contrast with RE/MAX almost embarrassing. Its agent count more than doubled in 2022, growing 113% year over year. Growth continued at a rapid clip in 2023 and up 66%, and then accelerated again in 2024, rising 77% for the full year to reach 24,140 agents. See how fast? Super fast. From the end of 2019 through mid-2025, RE/MAX's combined U.S. and Canada agent count fell nearly 12%. Quarter after quarter, the company's own earnings releases told the same story. Declining U.S. agent count has a primary driver of falling organic revenue. The numbers were relentless. RE/MAX U.S. agent count fell over every quarter in 2025. This is a graph. Sorry, TikTok, you can't see it. I'm sorry. It shows you exactly what's going on. U.S., Canada, and internationally. You see the agent count there. A record high with an asterisk. What made the situation cloudier was that RE/MAX's global agent count was at a record high. At the second quarter of 2025, international agents outside the U.S. and Canada had grown 11.5% year over year, reaching 72,438 agents. By the end of the full year, that figure had climbed to 75,683, a 7.9% annual increase. So a little bit of a growth going on, right? At the end of the second quarter of 2025, CEO Eric Carlson opened his earnings call by announcing that the company had reached an all-time high in its worldwide agent count. Technically, that was true. Technically. What he led with less prominently was that U.S. agents were down 7% in the same quarter, though he did frame the pace of domestic losses as an improvement. The record headline was real, but so was the domestic collapse running underneath it. So on one hand, you've got the national growth growing, which you have to factor in what kind of competition do you have across the aisle, across the pond, right? Versus what you have in the States. So even though they're seeing growth there, you're declining where you're based. And competitors are putting pressure on you. So your model is still broken. It's just you're still gaining. You're still outpacing on the international front. But what would happen if those other companies began to uptick and gain more and more momentum and then moved across the seas? You'd have the same problem. You still have a broken model. You got to do something about it. It just looks good, right? The problem with leaning on international growth to offset domestic losses is that the economics don't translate evenly across borders. International agents generate significantly less revenue per agent than their U.S. counterparts, a fact RE/MAX has disclosed, so they're even making less money off that. That's true. We base our continuing franchise fees, annual dues, and broker fees outside the U.S. and Canada on the same structure as our independent regions, except that the aggregate level of such fees is substantially lower in these markets. So they're growing, but they're making less money. As the mix of RE/MAX global network shifted toward lower revenue international agents, the company's top line fell even as its total headcount climbed. Revenue dropped. Okay. Stabilization meant losing agents more slowly. The source added a pointed observation about the agent demographic challenge. RE/MAX built its brand around experienced, high-producing agents, exactly the cohort that is now aging out of the industry. And recruiting the next generation of agents means competing with platforms that were built from the ground up to appeal to them. So this is the point of tension, right? You build a model that works for the top producing agents mainly. Okay, those are the ones that really benefit in the RE/MAX model. Okay, so now your model works for the top producing agents. So you can let other national franchises get your other agents equipped and growing and making money. And then you can go in and offer them a much better deal to entice that now top producing agent over to RE/MAX. That works unless there's a model out there that makes these top producing agents more money. So now you don't have the model that can respond to recruiting top performing agents anymore. The other brand is now competing with you for that. And then you also don't have a model that incentivizes brand new agents to come into your model to replace your agent out or leaving model. See the problem? RE/MAX tried to respond. In April 2025, the company launched Aspire, an optional pilot onboarding program designed to attract new agents. Here's the problem. You're too late. Rather than charging fixed monthly desk fees, Aspire uses a transaction-based structure. 5% of gross commission income per closing capped at $5,000 for the first year, plus a $25 per transaction fee and standard $410 annual dues. The traditional desk fee model remains available and in place for the rest of the network. Aspire was part of a broader suite of new economic models alongside programs called Ascend and Appreciate, all aimed at giving franchisees more flexibility in how they recruit and retain agents. By the end of 2025, Aspire had attracted over 2,000 agents. All right. Carlson was visibly encouraged. All that kind of stuff was happening. But look, it's fictitious. It's fictitious at best. It's a foundation of sand. He was not wrong exactly. Okay, the vicious cycle RE/MAX couldn't break. The vicious cycle that had taken hold was difficult to escape. Fewer agents meant lower franchise fee revenue. Lower revenue meant less investment in technology and tools. A weaker technology offering made RE/MAX less competitive. That made it harder to recruit and retain agents. See the problem? I mean, it's compounding itself. It's like compound interest in the negative sense, right? The company recognized the loop and discussed breaking it on nearly every earnings call for 3 years. It never fully did. The technology gap was widely discussed in the industry. Lauren Hintz, VP of Marketing and Strategic Initiatives at First Team Real Estate, put it directly when discussing the merger last week. RE/MAX agents aren't as tech savvy because they were never encouraged to be, she said. These tech-focused brokerages like Real track everything. So there's an ingrained accountability. If you don't have a high enough sales volume, you're not getting an assistant. All right, so they did all this. What the market was saying all along, through it all, the stock told the story most starkly. They just didn't pay attention, guys. They didn't pay attention. So again, I'm not trying to be harsh against RE/MAX. RE/MAX's story here is common across the board. It's a very common trend in business. I'm not faulting RE/MAX to being like, oh, they're unique in this situation. No, they're not at all. We all could easily be guilty of this very same thing. So we shouldn't take a position and cast judgment on RE/MAX and how could they ever let this happen? And they're a horrible company. That's not the position to take at all. We could all easily fall into this because we get comfortable doing what we think is always going to work. And that's the same thing in everything that we do, in our marketing and everything. We don't pay attention to the trends. We don't listen. We don't read. We don't discern. We just assume that what we're doing is always going to work. And then it gradually becomes more and more expensive and doesn't have the ROI, the return on investment. And that's what's happened here. This is just a story of a typical company doing this and falling apart. This is what happens. With that being said, I will briefly touch on this because it's going to go piggyback right off of this. This is not an article I was going to go through, but now you understand why this deal happened, right? Now let's go into just one more brief topic talking about a failure of a business under the same kind of understanding. So this is another article by Inman. It says what the Spirit Airlines collapse can teach the real estate industry. This one fatal mistake ended an empire, and it's not what the headlines want you to believe. So I'm not going to read this whole article, but I'm going to give you just a basic understanding about what's happening here. So if you really get into this and you enjoy business, I encourage you to go read the Spirit story. Okay, Spirit began with doing a offering for those that needed to fly for cheap just to get to point A to point B in short distances. Think Vegas, Orlando, the big travel areas. That was their model. Yes, they got a bad reputation for, being cheap and you had to pay for everything. But the point is, they had a demographic there that could get from point A to point B. And that was their model. They even made jokes about things. They talked about like, yeah, if you wanted a nice seat, yeah, you're gonna have to pay for it, right? They made a joke about everything, right? If you want a sip of water, you got to pay us for that too as well. They made a joke about it. If you rode Spirit, the flight attendants would kind of laugh at themselves, and it was actually kind of funny. All right, it was actually kind of funny. They made fun of themselves, and I always felt that was kind of fun, right? But what ended up happening is now the news makes you the press release made it sound like they fell apart because of that fuel costs due to the war. That sure, gas prices are a factor, but that's not really why they fell apart. What they fell apart with is because during this change, during this whole process, they began to change the way they did their business to be like everybody else. So they were doing the opposite of what Remax was doing in some ways. Okay, Remax was actually, Spirit was trying to become like Delta and American and United. They were gradually changing them to marry and match the two. Remax, unfortunately, didn't do a lot of changing. They just kind of kept doing the same thing over and over again. Spirit did the opposite. They actually just became more like every other airline. So they took away their differentiation and became more like the other companies. And so then everybody else on the airline that was flying Spirit said, well, if I'm going to pay just a few dollars short of Delta and United, why don't I just go there? And so that's what began to happen. People began to leave and not use Spirit because they could get a better experience with Delta United for just a little bit more. So that's the biggest problem. See, it says in late 2010, Spirit decided to break its model and it insisted on being more like other airlines. It stopped charging for carry-ons. Water and refreshments were included. It introduced a first-class big front seat, and it stopped poking fun at itself. Right? It's what Spirit was and what everyone expected until it wasn't. The new CEO during that time said the company was going to change its reputation and be more like the other guys. So these are two opposite. When you look at Remax, they didn't do enough to change like the other companies going around or forward thinking enough. Spirit wanted to become like everybody else. So these are two really good case studies that says, I need to be paying attention. I need to make adjustments, but I need to be forward thinking to see what that looks like to be able to make changes that are not like everybody else and what they're doing. Because if you look at what Real did and EXP and all these other companies that grew like crazy, they completely disrupted the industry. So we got to stay informed. Spirit should not become like everybody else. They should have doubled down in the niche that they had. And that's kind of the argument this article is actually making. It's like when you feel pressure to like go out and start doing many, many other things, and because everybody else is doing it and you forget your niche, you actually could fall apart as well. So that's kind of the argument that they make here. It says, so pick a sector, go all in and own it all the way. And just when you think it's time to get cute, go own it some more. So he's talking about like if you niche down or whatever, that's the point. But these are two different companies, two different approaches to business. And if you go to business school, this is kind of the stuff they talk about all the time. Okay. That was more or less a business class, right? I mean, that's kind of what it was. Still relevant for our industry, but it's also a business class. Let's go into our final one, guys. This is for fun. Finally, we're done with school. We're done with all these life lessons and business lessons and stuff like that. We're going to have a little bit of fun now to wrap up this week. Let me see. Let me get the article up here. This is the celebrity J-Lo, Jennifer Lopez. And it's basically Realtor.com is reporting that J-Lo and Ben Affleck are relisting their Beverly Hills estate. So this is a beautiful house. Wait until you see the pool and stuff. So TikTok, I wish I could share my screen. I wonder if there's a way. Every time I do this, they get mad at me. Sources. Let me see. Display capture. Add. Add source. I'm going to put it there. I think. How do I do this? Oh, wait, I need to move it to the top. Oh, okay. All right. There you guys go. All right, you can't see my face, but that works. All right, we'll see what they do. You guys can see it now. We'll see if I get flagged. All right, so those on YouTube and Rumble and Twitch and all that, kind of, here we go. So this is the article here. It says Jennifer Lopez relist former marital mansion for the heavily discounted price of $50 million after Ben Affleck gifted her palatial property. All right, so this is a property. I don't really care about why they're doing and what they're doing and that kind of stuff. I could probably make an observation here and just say, look, even in the luxury market, pricing is very important. Okay, we'll just land there. I want to have fun with this one, so we're just going to skip over all the drama and what it all means. I don't think there's any issues between Affleck and J-Lo. I think it all has to do with them just selling a piece of property, from what I've gathered. They put the property back on the market and with an asking price of $68 million, and soon after it was revealed that they had officially split. Oh, okay, so they are split. Okay, that makes sense. See, I don't follow any of this stuff. While they managed to finalize their divorce within just 20 weeks of Lopez filing, selling their former marital home would turn out to be a much tougher task to complete. And by May 2025, the exes had dropped their asking price to $59.95 million before delisting the home just 2 months later. So it's a story of reduction, okay? It's just a story of reduction. All right, so let's go down. Here is the house. This is the house. It says, Affleck and Lopez purchased the extraordinary property for $60.9 million in May of 2023, less than a year after they wed, and quickly set about renovating the estate, reportedly spending millions to turn it into their dream marital sanctuary. I mean, look at the front there. Now, it's funny. It's a very, to be honest, a simple design. There's really not. Let me see if I zoom in a little bit. Let me make sure that still is visible on. Yeah, that's a little better, right? You guys can see that? Okay. Like it's not a like drastically beautiful house. It's like just a perfect square, but it's very elegant. I mean, it's a very elegant, tastefully done, crafted home. I love the little balconies there. I think there's the columns, and I like the design. It's kind of a modern, based on Georgian style. I like it. Looks like it's gonna have a good view. There's your entrance there. Now, let me know in the comments what you guys think, because in some ways, like I would love to be there for like a party or an event. I would have a hard time living in a house this large. I don't think I would enjoy this at all. You know, you're so far apart from everything, and you know, like, I mean, what point are these chairs? I mean, it's beautiful. Don't get me wrong. This is gorgeous, but like, are you guys gonna sit in these chairs and have a conversation? Probably not. But this is the big entry. This is the foyer, I guess. The mansion has been listed multiple times with asking price. Yeah, we talked about that. Let's keep going. Yeah, it says when Affleck gifted. This is all kind of about gossip and stuff. I don't care. But look at this. Got a nice fireplace. Again, it maintains kind of a traditional but modern look. Very big bedroom here. And I like the tastefulness. I love the color of the wood. It's nice and light wood. I like that. I like the fireplace, a very large fireplace. There's the kitchen. It's a very modern kitchen. Man, look at those cabinets and stuff. Shiny and whew. I would like to know what the view is. I don't know exactly what we're looking at there. There we go. Look at the outdoor space there. Another fireplace. Lounge area, and look at this pool and this mountain. Whew. You have a lounge area in the water. There's your shower. Is that a barber chair? They've got a barber chair. It's like, look at that. That's crazy. That is crazy. Okay, there's another angle. So you've got, this is your dining room. So I'm going to assume, and this would make perfect sense to me, is that your kitchen is in this back left corner there behind the stairs. There's a door probably out there. You can kind of see the header there going into that room. And then that's the kitchen there. So then this is the large dining area. Now I love the color. It's funny. That's a bold move because they painted everything the same color, right? The trim, everything is that seafoam green, maybe I don't know. I don't know my colors very well, but That's really nice, actually, with the contrasting of the colors and the wallpaper there, and then the white. I really like the way that depth looks there. I think it's beautiful. This must be the living room, and it looks like to me, and maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but it kind of looks like this might open up and go. You can walk in and out, so you can create your living room into an outdoor living space. It's kind of what it looks like to me, which is awesome. You could not do that in most states because the humidity and the weather would be so crazy, but in California, I guarantee you can. Oh yeah, it says right there, the property features walls of glass that open up to the exterior. How awesome is that, right? Let me know in the comments if you guys could live in this house. Like, could you live here? Now, I will say the foyer was massive, but this seems very comfortable. This seems very nice. It's not overly large. Yes, I could enjoy this room quite well. There's that room again. So see, yes, okay. So this is where it kind of works. The balancing kind of works. It's like, yes, the trim, the walls, everything's painted in one color, but they have the wallpaper that kind of on both sides that kind of contrast that and bring it all together and kind of breaks up that color a little bit. I can't imagine what they paid for the interior designer. Whew. While the newly filed documents, oh yes, more gossip. Okay. Look at this pool. Holy moly. It's an angled infinity pool with lounge chairs. It has a lounge area all the way around the deck. Sorry, had to sneeze. So, and then upstairs, you have this balcony as well, looking down at the pool and the valley. Flat out amazing. As for its more traditional features, the home boasts a staggering 12 bedrooms, 24 bathrooms that are dotted around its vast 38,000 square foot interior. This home is way larger than the pictures even look. Way, way larger. It's amazing. The estate sits on a plum 5.2 acre lot in Beverly Crest community. It's beautiful. There we go. The property spans more than 8,600 square feet and is made up of a main residence, guest house, pool house, and a 5-stall barn, complete with a tack room and a private equestrian arena. Holy moly. But yeah, this is built for entertaining, guys. Like, built for it. I mean, you look at the infinity pool, how large that is. It can accommodate a lot of people. You have a smaller pool area over here. Maybe it's a hot tub, maybe, I don't know. You have the stairs going down, nice gradual walk-in into the deeper area. You have the lounge area over here for all the chairs. You have probably like a privacy area there. Then you have this big garden area for just green grass, resting and relaxing. Fire pit probably over there somewhere. You have another, looks like a stone fireplace area here that has the open area that opens up into the house, and the living room opens up, and this big patio, another outdoor fireplace. Upstairs, lounge area. I mean, this home is built to entertain. Are we surprised? Is that it? I'm sure I could log on and get more photos, but man, sometimes it's just fun to see how other people live. All right, guys, that is the end of today's show. I thank you for everybody that followed, liked, and subscribed already. Thank you guys for that. Cassie, I thank you again for the donation of the rose. I appreciate that greatly. Thank you so much for that. Guys, it's been a good show. It's been a good week. Hopefully you guys have had a good week. It's been a busy one. Hopefully you guys are busy. I thank you guys, as always, for joining me on my live stream and taking time out of your busy schedule to come here and listen to me talk and go through this kind of stuff. I don't take that for granted. I just want to say a personal thank you for that. I do greatly appreciate that. Hopefully you guys have a good Friday and a great weekend. Do take time to rest, get refreshed, spend time with family and friends. It's very, very important. This job can be very, very draining, so I highly encourage you to do so. I will be back live streaming again next Monday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, where you're watching me now. You can go back and watch any of my videos and live streams on my YouTube channel, The Real Estate Advantage. Just search in YouTube for that channel, and then you'll see my face and stuff like that. That's me. Please consider subscribing and liking and commenting and following, all that kind of stuff. So I do greatly appreciate it, guys. Have a great rest of your week. That is the Real Estate Brief for today. So if you found this helpful, please consider hitting the like button to tell YouTube you'd like to see more of this type of content, and consider subscribing to join a community of real estate agents that are focused on building a business that is relationship focused first. There's always more. That's what we have next week. We will see you guys then. Have a great